Have you ever published a Power BI report only for users to complain there is missing data and problems with the visuals? Well, that has certainly happened to me because in big reports it's really hard to check every single page and every visual one by one. So to help with that, I have created an external tool that you can use to generate a list of exceptions automatically every time before you publish the report. So if you head over to my GitHub, and I'll leave the link below, you will find the tool and how to install it. So for a bit of context, the current checks that we can do are what I call page structure, where we look for filters that might have been forgotten on a page or a visual. We look for the page sizes, see if they have been changed from the default, and we check the report landing page. And the most interesting ones are these data checks, and I'll show you how to build them. But you basically can define any business rules you need and codify them in a DAX Studio file. So this is simply a DAX query that's going to be executed against your current reports, and it's going to either pass or fail the check. And these two checks will be then compiled into a report, a file that tells you what passed or didn't pass the checks. So let's go over the steps required to install the tool. And the first thing you'll need is to run PowerShell as an admin. This will install files on your machine. And after you do that, you simply need to copy this command right here and run it. So this will download the files required and extract them to your downloads folder and install them on the required location on your machine. So that is done. The tool is now available within Power BI Desktop. So in this case, I already have the reports open, so I have to close Power BI and open it again, and I should see the tool available. Okay, and there you have it, automated checks. Now, when you first install the tool, you're going to have to configure it. So if you click there, it's not going to work at first. So let's see how we can configure the tool. So if you head over to your C drive, you'll see there's a new folder, Power BI Automated Checks. And inside you'll find a number of different things. To start with, PBI Tools, which is actually another external tool created by Matthias Thierbach, without which this automated checks would not be possible. So a big thank you for Matthias for making that available. Then the settings file is what you're going to have to configure for your specific report and tenant. So here on system settings, if you're not running the data checks, you can actually ignore all of this. You don't have to do that if you don't have the service principal. And if you're not running those data checks, you'll have to turn the run DAX test setting to 0. And you can also ignore the publish workspace ID. So this is only if you're not running the data checks. For everything else, you'll have to fill out the report path, so the Power BI reports that you want to test, and the test folder for that specific report. So if I come back to the main folder, you'll see there's a tests folder that should be specific to each report you want to test. So I'm actually going to bring another folder I have already created for the demo report I have open, and I will show you what is inside it. So the first file is DAX tests, which will open in DAX Studio. And if I show you what that does, it's simply a number of queries that I have appended together. And if I run that against my Power BI report that I have open, you will see that it generates this table. So there's a number of tests, there's an expected value and an actual value. So the actual value is live out of my current report. So if it is not equal to the expected value, then it does not pass a check. So you can imagine many rows on this file, each one doing a different test. For example, you could look at the source data on your database if you have one versus what Power BI is saying. If I don't get the same result, then some data was lost in transformations. That's an example. Another one could be that you have a business rule that, let's say, your forecast cannot have changed more than 10% since the previous month. So that's a sensibility check that you could build with a query and test automatically through this method as well. So really powerful. It is worth setting up the data structure, the data tests, if you can set up the service principal. Okay, and with the configuration done, we can now come back to Power BI Desktop and run the checks. So this will trigger this window. It's going to run all those checks automatically. Checking all the filters applies to pages and visuals, page sizes. Now it's running the data checks, and when it's completed and I press enter, I get this Excel report that tells me for all those checks what passed and didn't pass the criteria. So for example, this one right here is telling me there is a filter applied to this field, start of month, on all pages. And if I come here to the report, it is indeed applied to all pages, so that fails the check. If I look at other things, for example, the page dimension, this row is the default, so that is not flagged as a problem. Other thing being flagged as a problem is a table in the page overview. It's saying there is a filter applied to it. So I know that I have two tables, this is one of them. If I select it, there is indeed another filter applied there, which might or might not be a problem. So I'll tell you later how we can actually avoid this being flagged if you so wish to do. And if I keep coming down, the last checks will be the data checks. I only have two as mentioned, but you could have many, many more. And in this case, the expected values equal the actual values, so they pass the checks. Now let's have a look at this row highlighted here. It's saying that the page dimensions check for this tab have failed because the dimensions have been changed from the original. Now, in some situations, you actually have done this for a reason. You might have applied a filter to a page or a visual, and that is okay. You don't want that to be flagged as a problem. So in those scenarios, you can come to the tests folder for the report and open the ignore tests file. And what I've already done here is I've added the details of the check that I want the tool to skip the next time. And how do you know what to type in there? So if you open the Excel reports, the titles check type, check name, and detail are the blue text here on the left. And the values will be exactly copied from the Excel report. And I've already done that. So if you save the ignore test file and run the checks again, what's going to happen is that I've already done that in the report. That check will be ignored the next time. So when you have many, many rows, this is very useful because you can simply filter out the ignored and true and be left with a list with the real issues you have to fix. And there you have it, an automated way to run checks on the report before you publish to the user, which will hopefully increase the governance and assurance of your reports. If you have found that useful, please let me know in the comments below, and equally, if you have ideas for checks that you would find useful, please let me know in the comments as well.